On the evening of July 6, 1988, a catastrophic explosion tore through the Piper Alpha oil platform in the North Sea, roughly 190 kilometers off the coast of Scotland. What followed would become one of the deadliest and most costly offshore disasters in history, leaving hundreds of families forever changed. Later investigations would trace the origins of the tragedy back to something deceptively simple: a breakdown in communication and a missing piece of paperwork. The Piper oil field was discovered in 1973, and development began almost immediately. Construction of the Piper Alpha platform moved at remarkable speed, and within 4 years, the structure was operational. It was a fixed offshore platform equipped to extract oil and transport it via pipeline to an onshore terminal on Flotta Island, part of the Orkney Islands. Piper Alpha also acted as a hub, receiving oil from neighboring platforms before forwarding it onward for processing. Life on the rig was intense and isolated. Workers lived on board for weeks at a time, sleeping in shared cabins and taking meals in a small canteen. To maintain morale, the platform included a modest recreation area with a cinema and a pool table. Safety was a major design consideration. The rig was divided into sections separated by fire-resistant walls, with the living quarters deliberately positioned as far from the oil processing areas as possible. Once fully operational, Piper Alpha proved extraordinarily productive, capable of producing up to 300,000 barrels of oil per day. Alongside oil, the extraction process also produced natural gas. For several years, this gas was simply burned off. However, in 1978, the platform's operator, Occidental Petroleum Caledonia, received approval to process and export the gas instead. While this significantly increased profits, it also introduced new dangers. Gas processing equipment had to be added to the existing structure, and due to space limitations, it was installed closer to the accommodation block than ideal. On the morning of July 6, 1988, one of 2 gas condensate pumps, known as Pump A, was taken offline for routine maintenance. The work could not be completed before the end of the shift. To seal the pump temporarily, engineers fitted a metal safety plate, bolted into place by hand. Crucially, this was only a temporary measure. An engineer filled out paperwork stating that Pump A must not be restarted, intending to pass it to the incoming shift supervisor. However, with the supervisor occupied, the document was left in the control room shortly before 9:45 p.m. Later that night, Pump B, the only remaining operational pump, failed after ice buildup caused it to shut down. This created an urgent problem. Without at least one pump running, the platform would lose power entirely. The night shift manager searched the available documentation to determine whether Pump A could safely be restarted. The critical permit warning against its use was not found, and the temporary metal plate was not easily visible during a visual inspection. At 9:52 p.m., the decision was made to restart Pump A. Almost immediately, high-pressure gas flowed into the pump. With nowhere to go, pressure built rapidly until the temporary plate failed. Gas escaped into the platform, triggering alarms, but there was no time to react. The gas ignited, producing a massive explosion that obliterated the control room. Although the internal walls were designed to resist fire, they were not designed to withstand blasts. Workers in nearby accommodation areas were thrown violently from their beds, while many inside the control room were killed instantly. In a normal emergency, control room personnel would have coordinated evacuation efforts. With the control room destroyed, organized evacuation became impossible. Making matters worse, the platform's automatic fire suppression system was offline. Earlier that day, it had been disabled so divers could safely conduct underwater maintenance without the risk of being drawn into the system. Our seawater intakes. With no effective firefighting capability, Flames spread rapidly. Evacuation descended into chaos. Some workers managed to reach lifeboats or climb down ropes to escape. Others had no choice but to jump directly into the sea, a fall comparable to leaping from a 40-story building. Many workers removed their life jackets before jumping, knowing that hitting the water at such speed while wearing one could cause severe injury or death. Even those who reached the sea were not safe. Oil spilled onto the water's surface and ignited, while burning debris rained down from above. Additional explosions followed. In one area, burning oil dripped onto a platform used by divers. Normally, the oil would have fallen harmlessly through the metal grating into the water below. However, rubber matting, placed to protect divers' feet, trapped the burning oil instead. The resulting fire heated an active oil pipeline until it ruptured, triggering another devastating explosion. Nearby rescue vessels rushed to assist. The semi-submersible vessel Tharos pulled survivors from the water and attempted to fight the fire using onboard water cannons. However, these cannons were so powerful that they had to be used with extreme caution to avoid injuring survivors in the sea. Another vessel, the Sandhaven, launched a small motorboat that successfully rescued 6 workers. Tragically, as it attempted to reach more survivors, a secondary explosion destroyed the boat, killing all 6 rescued men along with 2 crew members. On the platform itself, many workers had gathered in the accommodation block, trapped by smoke and flames. They could feel the structure beginning to fail. Survivor Billy Clayton later described his escape, recalling the burning cranes, the helideck as the last refuge, and the moment when another explosion scattered those still alive. He remembered waking in the water beneath a wall of fire, swimming blindly, until he found another man floating beside him. Only after reaching rescue did he realize the man he had clung to was already dead. At 11:50 p.m., less than 3 hours after the first explosion, Piper Alpha collapsed and sank into the North Sea. Rescue and recovery efforts continued into the following day, while the search for victims lasted for weeks. In total, 167 men lost their lives. Only 61 survived, nearly all carrying lifelong physical or psychological trauma. The fire itself burned for 3 weeks before it was finally extinguished. The public inquiry that followed uncovered a chain of failures. Nearby platforms had continued pumping oil and gas into Piper Alpha, as workers were unsure whether they had the authority to shut down operations. Occidental Petroleum faced intense criticism for inadequate safety systems and poor maintenance procedures, though no criminal charges were brought. The inquiry issued over 100 safety recommendations, reshaping offshore oil operations in the North Sea. One of the most significant changes was the transfer of safety oversight from the UK Department of Energy, which balanced productivity with regulation, to the Health and Safety Executive, an organization solely focused on worker safety. Survivors and families later formed the Piper Alpha Families and Survivors Association, which continues to campaign for improved offshore safety standards. On the 3rd anniversary of the disaster, a memorial statue was unveiled in Aberdeen, depicting 3 oil workers, one modeled after a survivor. Oil production continues in the Piper field today. Piper Alpha itself has been replaced by a modern platform known as Piper Bravo. Offshore drilling remains a dangerous occupation, but the lessons paid for with lives in 1988 have helped ensure that those working in the North Sea today do so under far safer conditions than before.